And take your moment and action.
Can we shoot a professional movie on an iPhone 17 Pro? We're going to go into all the pros, the cons, and the real limitations that nobody else is talking about. And more importantly, if this phone belongs on your next production set. Before we dive into this, I want to be really clear about one thing, that we are not sponsored by anybody in this video. This is just my honest, unbiased opinion who put this phone through its paces on a full working professional set. About a month ago, I saw a Facebook post from a director that was looking for a DP to shoot a short film, and she wanted to do it on an iPhone. But this one actually made me stop scrolling, and I had to reach out to her because honestly, I've always wanted to shoot a film on an iPhone. And after a few days, I actually got an interview with her, and turns out she's a 15-year-old director just getting into the industry as a director. She's been in the acting realm for quite some time. So within the first few minutes of that conversation that I had with her, I could literally tell that this young woman had more creative vision and intentionality than a lot of filmmakers I have been working with that has decades of experience. The whole crew that was on the set, they were absolutely incredible, extremely talented people all the way around, but here is the part, though, that really got me. Brooklyn, she shot her last film on the Alexa Mini LF, and she had approximately about 30 people on her crew side. For anyone who does not know about the Ari Alexa, this cinema camera is probably the most respected cinema camera on the planet, and it costs more than most people's cars nowadays.
Wow.
She was not coming to the iPhone because it was the only option available, right? She came to it intentionally. She wanted to step out and experiment and see if she could find something more practical, more portable, and more efficient without giving up the quality of her work or her vision. That is actually the right why. Let us talk about what it actually took to make this work. You can absolutely pick up your iPhone, open up the native camera app, and put it on a tripod and hit record. But the moment you do that, you are literally handing all your creative control over to the phone. And what I mean by that is like your white balance is going to shift, your exposure is going to go all over the place. The phone is going to make all of the decisions for you. And on a narrative production set, that is simply not acceptable, right? You got to have full control over everything. So here's what we actually use to unlock everything on this phone and make it to its full capability. The first thing was the Blackmagic camera app. It is free for you to download. And the thing about this app, it unlocks the full capability of your phone, where you can control the white balance, the ISO, and with the latest update, you can actually do rack focusing. But it literally had everything you would expect to have on a professional camera. The only thing that you can't control on this, which is kind of frustrating, is the aperture. The other thing that we used with the Blackmagic app was the Blackmagic Pro Dock. This device is what literally transformed the iPhone into a full production tool. And with the Pro Dock, you can actually get time code. Time code literally locks that time together between the camera and the audio recorder, basically marries it together. And it just syncs everything cleanly, and your post workflow becomes that much faster. And as I say this, time is money in this industry. It is loaded with all kinds of tools that you can use. It also gives you the capability to plug in an HDMI, like a full HDMI cord into it. And this will allow you to run a proper video village for your director, your first AC, whoever needs a monitor, they can have it. You have 3 USB ports on this dock, which is where you can also plug in your external SSD to record ProRes RAW. When you shoot RAW, you will need to use an SSD of some sort. And I researched trying to find the right SSD that would work for the iPhone. And I really didn't find much. So I went to my trusty Samsungs, and Samsungs never let you down. So we ended up using the Samsung T7. I want to be completely upfront with you guys because this matters, especially if you are thinking about investing in this Pro Dock. It is literally $299. So it's a big chunk of change to spend on something like this. On the production set, we believed that this thing had to be plugged into a wall outlet. I discovered you can actually power the Pro Dock using a battery tray. And I ended up testing it with the battery tray from the Aperture 60D light. And it was paired with two 970 batteries. And it powered the Pro Dock just fine. And it ran my SSD. Now, does that make the rig more bulky? Yes, of course it does. And I would imagine, a V-mount battery or a gold mount battery would work as well. But at that point, you're adding significant weight and taking away the portability factor of why you're using the iPhone in the first place. So you are really choosing between two options here. You can either plug it into a wall outlet or you can power it through different batteries like the 970 batteries or V-mount. And in my opinion, neither one is ideal. I would still love to see Blackmagic come out with a new version of this Pro Dock with a battery built directly into it, because that would solve literally everything and make this the most complete iPhone filmmaking tool on the market. Now, here's the workaround that I came up with that we used for all our moving shots, like, if we were doing handheld or anything like that, because we literally could not have the extension cord in the way when we were doing moving shots. And I essentially just unplugged the Pro Dock and bypassed it entirely and just plugged the SSD directly into the phone. Now, when I did that, of course, that killed the video village and everyone was blind, but it worked for what we needed to do. Now, let's talk about the cage, because this is where I have some very honest feedback to share. I went with small rig. I would steer away from small rig universal cage. And the reason why that I would steer away from the small rig cage is, one, this clip mount right here. You see this? It doesn't account for all the side buttons on the iPhone 17 Pro or even the Pro Max, to say the least. Like the camera control button, the power button, the volume buttons, they all get in the way. And no matter what you do, when you start mounting this and attaching it, it will press one of the buttons. And it's kind of funny because I almost pressed the emergency services like twice when I was putting and mounting it onto the cage. I would love to see another rendition of this from Small Rig to where it accounts for all the buttons on the iPhone. And then on top of that, it didn't come with an ND filter tray, and you really need an ND filter on your iPhone. So we ordered the plate for the Small Rig, this thing right here. And the problem with this is that it does not line up to any of the holes. I mean, look at this. This is made for the universal cage, and unfortunately, it does not line up at all. And they were both made by Small Rig. Small Rig, you fail.
This is the worst.
So I had to go back to Amazon last minute and order a clip-on ND adapter, which was this thing right here. And yes, it works. The ND filter is garbage. I tried it out on day one, hated the look that it was doing. It was just softening the entire image. And this one was from Boysling Lens, I guess is what it is. It was like a $22 clip-on filter. But what we ended up doing was sandwiching this 67 millimeter ND filter between the clip and the phone. And yes, you can see some scratch marks on the ND filter. Needless to say, that particular filter is now permanently dedicated to the iPhone rig, and I'm not even actually mad about it. It is just part of the story now.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
Let us talk about what this phone is actually capable of technically, because understanding this before you get to set is going to save you from a lot of painful surprises. Let's talk about ProRes RAW, which is the highest quality codec that this phone can shoot, and it is genuinely impressive, but it does come with a caveat: storage demand. You need a lot of storage, and you need to take that seriously because we were going through roughly, I would say, about 10 gigabytes per minute. Even my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera does not burn through that much data that fast in Blackmagic RAW. So we shot approximately about a terabyte of footage per day. And as I mentioned earlier, the apertures on each lens are completely fixed. Like the 13 millimeter, it sits at an f2.2, and the 24 millimeter is f1.8, and the 100 millimeter is f2.8. And you cannot change any of those inside the app. You can't. It's locked. Now, if you do drop down to ProRes instead of ProRes RAW, you do get access to more focal lengths. But here's what is actually happening underneath the hood. The phone is using its internal processing to crop into the image and simulate that focal length. So if you want like 48 millimeter, it is cropping in from that 24 millimeter lens. It's literally not a true optical focal length. For our production, we actually stayed in ProRes RAW the entire time, and it worked only with the native lenses, of course, and about 90% of this film ended up on the 24 millimeter. And for this particular story, that actually ended up being the right creative choice because, with the 24 millimeter, there is this slight distortion that comes with shooting on that particular focal length. And it really just drove home the emotional characteristics of this story that we were trying to portray. I was actually very impressed by what this iPhone could produce in the controlled conditions. But when your shadows go just slightly underexposed, that's when things actually fall apart very quickly. Like your blacks, they get muddy, they get grainy, they get crummy. And you got to keep in mind that it is a very small sensor, but that small sensor is doing a remarkable job. But you have to meet it halfway with your lighting plan, and nothing can be literally underexposed at all. Like your highlights, they cannot clip at all. And when you find that balance, this phone will reward you with an image that will genuinely surprise you. And even in those situations where we did pick up some shadow noise, a little noise reduction in DaVinci Resolve cleaned everything up nicely. Let me put all of this in perspective by comparing it to something like the Sony FX3 or a full frame camera setup. A full frame camera, it has a significantly larger sensor, which means it has more light gathering capabilities, deeper depth of field control, and interchangeable lenses. Now, what the iPhone gives you that no cinema camera can is freedom. You got to think about it. It is lighter, it moves faster, and you can actually operate it with a much smaller crew. It gives you that creative freedom. But do not let the small form factor fool you into thinking that you could shortcut your lighting, because lighting is non-negotiable no matter what tool you are using.
Together we run a no-nonsense office.
There was this young actress on this film, and at one point on day 2, Brooklyn wanted to capture a POV shot from the character's perspective. So we decided to just hand this young actress, she's I think like 9 years old, the phone. We handed her the whole rig, and we had her shoot it herself. And on a larger cinema rig, you can only imagine we would be having a much longer conversation, and she probably wouldn't have been able to handle a rig that size. But with the iPhone, it just felt right and natural. She held it, she framed it, and, she shot her very own POV. And I think that the most precious moment was day 3 when Brooklyn was telling us right before we started shooting that actress really wanted to be a filmmaker when she grew up. That is the kind of things that happens when the tools get out of the way and the story takes over. And it was just one of those moments on a film set that you just cannot plan for, and you never will forget, right? Because those are the moments that you carry with you forever. This industry at its best is about telling stories that matter. And sometimes the set itself becomes the most powerful story of all. Is the iPhone 17 Pro the right tool for your next production? And I feel like the answer lives entirely in your why. And I say that because the camera is just a tool. Every tool has a purpose, and every purpose has a tool. And the question you have to answer before you commit to anything is, what does this specific story need, and what does this tool give my production that another tool cannot? Brooklyn had an answer to that question. Like I mentioned before, she already shot a film on the Alexa, and she was not chasing the iPhone because it seemed cool. She was using it to learn, to experiment, and to find a more agile and efficient way to tell her stories. And that is a legitimate why, and the work actually reflects it. If you are shooting a documentary, a talking head series, a content creation, or an intimate passion project with a small crew and good lighting, I feel like this is actually a genuinely capable tool. The ProRes RAW pipeline is absolutely crazy, and the Blackmagic workflow is awesome. The image, when it is properly lit, is something you will be proud of. And if you want to shoot on an iPhone simply because you have seen other people do it, I would steer you towards more of something like the Sony FX3 or the A7S III or something comparable. Because, the iPhone is not as practical on a full narrative production set as you might think. And if your projects live in dark environments such as like horror or thriller or suspense, the low light performance is just not where it needs to be yet. Would I shoot a full feature on the iPhone? Probably not right now. Not because, it is a bad tool or anything, but because it is not ready for every type of production yet. It is getting there though, And I feel like the day Blackmagic puts a battery built directly into ProDoc, it is going to be a whole lot closer to being ready for almost any type of project. If you are in the planning stages of a production, you are weighing your options. I really hope today helped you guys get that much closer to the right answer. Now, I did mention time code several times throughout this video, and I did that on purpose because it is the one of the single most important things you can put to work on any production set, regardless of what camera you are using. If you do not fully understand how timecode works and why it belongs on every set you walk onto, go watch this video next. It is going to change how you approach your productions, and it is going to save you and your editors hours of frustration in post.